guys, Avatar here, welcome back. Today I want to talk about the upcoming patch and everything that's going to be going on with that and kind of my take on everything. Quite a lot of things are happening, so it's pretty robust, so let's kind of dig right in. Today's January 14th of 2014, so I mean, if you're listening to this in the year 2015, this is a little bit late to the party, but the new patch here should be coming out, I'd say probably within the end of the week, it should say. It's going to be patch number 1.0.0.4243. And quite a few things are happening, so let's take a look here. First, we got Unleash the Hounds. It is being reduced from 4 mana to 2. We then have the good old Pyroblast that's being... All these are nerfs, by the way. We have, I guess technically Unleash the Hounds would be a buff, but hey. They're really nerfs for the most part. Pyroblast is going from 8 mana to 10. The Warlock's Blood Imp is going from 1/1 that has stealth at the end and gives all your minions +1 health, going to 0/1, and at the end of your turn give another random friendly minion +1 health. The Warrior is getting heavily nerfed, with Warsaw Commander being reworked, and it now reads: whenever you play a minion with 3 or less attack, give a charge. And the charge spell has been reworked to cost 3 mana instead of 0, and it now gives a friendly minion +2 attack and charge. Neutral minions, a few nerfs as well. Abusive Sergeant just kind of got a tooltip update, as well as the Dark Iron Dwarf. Its battlecry now works like Abusive Sergeant's battlecry, where it's give a minion +2 attack until end of turn. Abusive Sergeant, I guess it's really not just a tooltip update, right? Because it used to say give a friendly minion +2 attack, now it says give a minion +2 attack. So we'll talk a little bit what really that means going down the line. Defender of Argus is now a 2/3, used to be a 3/3. Novice Engineer is going down from a 1/2 to a 1/1. And Sylvanas Windrunner is now costing 6 mana, up from 5. So really a lot of nerfs there, except for the Unleash the Hounds, which I guess we can start with that. Personally, I used to play Unleash the Hounds all the time before they ended up nerfing it, and they completely changed it around. What it used to do, if you don't know, is it used to basically give all of your beasts charge and +1 damage. So there's a lot of hunters that would have 3, 4, 5 beasts in their hand, all very cheap. They can play them at the same time, then Unleash the Hounds. You could do quite a bit of damage in one turn. It wasn't as extreme as the Warrior 1-turn kill decks that are out nowadays, but it was very good. I don't think it was overpowered, but Blizzard's all about being able to have counterplay to everything and being able to do that much damage one turn without your opponent being able to respond. There's no counterplay. So now they're buffing it from 4 mana down to 2, so now people can use it a little bit more often. I still don't really see that much of a use for it, especially in a hunter deck. I feel hunter decks right now are very weak. If a hunter wants to win, they really have to kind of rely on a lot of the neutrals. There's just not enough beast synergy in the game right now, in my opinion, for it to really take off. Of course, there are some combos with Unleash the Hounds, and this is going to make it a little bit easier to get off. You're talking about combos with the Scavenging Hyena, combos with the Buzzard, things like that. You have 3, 4 enemy minions. If you have a Hyena and a Buzzard down, you pop Unleash the Hounds, you just got 4 beasts. So I mean, it's very, to me, it's very niche. So the odds of people actually running their deck, I don't know. I personally don't think everyone's going to still run it, but there's a lot of talk on the forums saying that people are going to start putting their decks. I don't know. We'll have to see. That's kind of to be determined. Next up was the Pyroblast. So this is a big nerf for me, and for me personally. I right now am really on a mage kick, and I'm not using the stupid net decks a lot of people have out there right now. I'm kind of going with my own, beating to my own drummer, as you would say. But I do use Pyroblast in my deck. I mean, who doesn't? Do I think this is going to make Pyroblast not even usable? I mean, it's going to 10 mana. So the biggest thing now is going to be, if you cast Pyroblast, you're going to have to kill him. Now, most people do kill people with Pyroblast in one spell hit, as it is now. Unfortunately, turn 8s aren't going to be Pyroblastable anymore. Probably not a word, but I just coined it. So you're literally going to have to wait till turn 10, 9 if you fucking save the coin the entire time. But waiting those extra 2 turns, I think, is going to be where it really ends up hurting the mages. We're not going to be able to just wait around until turn 10, hoping for that Pyroblast, you know, to get off. So it's going to make things difficult and different. Very different, I think. I think people still have it in their decks. They might drop it down from 2 to 1. I really don't know at this point. Again, it's something that we're going to really have to see. There's a lot of different types of plays that you can make from it when it was at 8, right? You could do Pyroblast Frostbolt, you could do Pyroblast Fireblast. Pyroblast, maybe coin something else. I mean, there's a lot of different plays and possibilities, especially if you're able to get a Pyroblast off as early as turn 7 with the coin. So there's a lot of play there. Now, unfortunately, nerfing the 10 mana is really going to put a hamper on it, and it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to lose a lot of value, but again, it's too early to tell. I think mages are still going to be strong. They're just going to have to find other ways to play. The biggest thing people are talking about right now are that Pyroblast isn't the problem, Ice Block is. I don't think either one of the problem. I think the problem was the both of them, and I think nerfing Pyroblast is probably good enough for people to start shying away from it, and people are going to start to focusing now on probably finding other ways to use that Ice Block. But against your opponent, if your opponent Ice Blocks, it'll be a lot easier to overcome now if they don't have Pyroblast coming to you at turn 8. So the Warlock Blood Imp. Okay, so a lot of people think this is a nerf, and in some ways it is, and in some ways it's not. Being a 1/1 giving all minions +1 health has been very good for a lot of the very efficient neutral decks that the Warlocks have been building, right? So you have some of the top net decks are just basically a bunch of Sunshattered Clerics, a bunch of Harvest Golems, Argent Commanders, Defender of Arguses, things like that. They're just very efficient across the board. You get a Blood Imp out there, and it buffs everything. It really makes it a hard time for your opponent. Not to mention Murloc decks, it was awesome in that as well. Not to mention that versus Paladins, the way the health buff system works is that if they played the Equality and Pyromancer combo, everyone would survive except basically the Blood Imps. Because after Equality put everyone's HP to 1, the Blood Imp just raised it all back to 2. So you're like, okay, well, it sounds like a pretty hard nerf. It actually, in my opinion, isn't. Okay, so if you don't run those types of gimmicks, and I don't want to call them gimmicks because they're very efficient decks, but they're gimmicks, let's be honest. If you don't run those kinds of decks, this is actually a completely different look at the Blood Imp. You're completely taking the offense of it away, so it's a 0/1 now, so it really has no offensive value unless you buff it. And they're really giving it a completely different look. So instead of saying, oh my god, all my minions, they're not being buffed anymore, what I really look at is the fact that you're now giving another random friendly minion +1 health. So it's now that priest that is a 2/1 and buffs each, or I should say buffs a random minion with the +1. It's actually a pretty strong card. If you take in consideration that everyone wants to nuke that card down, and you realize that the Blood Imp now is going to be in stealth, so they're going to have to use some of that AoE removal to get rid of him, or he's going to continually buff your minions +1 health at a time. I think the biggest strong point here is the fact that you're giving a random minion +1 permanent health. That's a pretty big deal. So if they leave him unchecked for a few turns, that can really turn the tide and can really make a certain creature very strong. Alright, so the Warrior, I think the Warrior got hit the hardest overall, and the Warriors are notorious for the last couple weeks of being the one-turn kill decks, right? You got your 10 health, so you can play 2 Molten Giants for 0 cost. You can give them charge for either 0 cost as the card, or you can put a Warsong Commander down, which gives them charge as well. And you're at least hitting for 16 right there. People made it even more crazy with putting Youthful Brewmasters down, picking the Molten Giants back up, putting them back down with the Warsong Commander, and charging again. That was a big thing that required quite a bit of cards, though, to do. You needed at least, 5 cards in your hand and 10 HP. But it worked, and it worked a lot. The newer one people are doing is you play Alexstrasza for 9. She reduces the opponent's health to 15. You then give her charge, which costs 0 mana. She hits for 8, putting them at bloody freaking 7 HP. And then you put your Molten Giant down because you're at 10 and less HP. And then you give him a charge card as well. So that's only 4 cards, and that's basically a kill condition almost every single time, as long as they don't have a taunt or armor. So those are pretty big one turn kill combos, and like I said earlier, Blizzard wants to get away from the non-counterplay, and there's no counterplay to that. You can't stop them, again, unless you had a lot of armor or if you had big taunts. So they nerfed, not only did they nerf Warsaw Commander, which now I believe is just going to be a useless card, because it now, instead of being a 2/3 for 3 that whenever you play a minion give a charge, it says whenever you play a minion with 3 or less attack give a charge. So it's nowhere near, I mean 3 attack isn't, think about all the cards over 3 attack. The significant amount of cards over 3 attack with that. So it's not going to be easy to really keep that in decks. And it's also going to be interesting, I think, to see how often people that are playing against it deal with it as critical as they used to, right? As soon as that used to hit the floor of the board before, you had to absolutely positively take it out as soon as you saw it. Now I wonder if people are going to say, yeah, it's a nuisance and it's definitely a priority, but maybe there might be higher priorities now. And then, of course, the actual charge card, which used to be 0 mana and give a minion charge, is now 3 mana, but you give that minion charge and 2 attack. They're giving you some trade-off. They're saying, hey, you can't do these stupid one-turn kills anymore, but at the same time, you're getting a little bit of attack as well. So it's cool. I mean, I think for the most part, this has completely nerfed the one-turn kill warrior almost to a pulp. I really don't think it exists anymore now. Well, actually, let me be honest. I don't think it does in any way, shape, or form. I mean, hypothetically, you could still play 2 Molten Giants with 10 or less HP, and then 2 charge cards for 6, and they'd be 20 damage right there. So I mean, there's still, but that's also 4 cards in your deck. So I mean, it's still kind of gimmicky, but it's definitely not as bad as it used to be. One other combo that you can still kind of play here, it's not really nerfed that hard, but kind of, is if you're talking at the Raging Worgen, who's a 3/3 initially. If you enrage that with the Battle Rage, which is 0 mana, it makes it, I believe, like a 6 or 7/2, and it gives them Wind Fury. And then if you play the charge on it as well, it'll be then like a 9/2, so that's 18 damage right there. And that's for 3 mana for the creature, 3 mana for the charge, and 0 mana for the enrage. That's only 6 mana, and you got 18 damage right there. So that's going to be a combo there as well, that you'll start seeing a little bit more of, just because that attack ends up, scaling very high because of the Wind Fury. And finally, you got some neutral nerfs here. The Abusive Sergeant, the Dark Iron Dwarf, so now they can give any minion +2 attack. So let's talk about that first. This is going to be good for some cards like Big Game Hunter and maybe some priests, or anybody that has specific like attack kill conditions, right? So if you have a 5/10 taunt and you're a druid, and a Dark Iron Dwarf comes out and puts you up to a 7/10, you can now get Big Game Hunter, right? And or let's say you're a 4/4 freaking Azure Drake, and the Big Game Hunter comes out and puts you at 6/4, you can now get, Shadow Word Death, okay? So some examples of being able to buff either a friendly or enemy minion to turn is going to be pretty good for some good counterplay. However, if this is working like I think it's going to work, you're not going to be able to play a Dark Iron Dwarf if you have no friendly minions and they have a minion without buffing them. So that might actually hurt in the end, as well as the Abusive Sergeant, because the Abusive Sergeant comes out a little bit earlier. And so if you're trying to play Abusive Sergeant, in reaction to what they're playing, you might end up having to buff them. There's no way for me to confirm that right now, but I'm almost positive that's how it's going to work, because that's how other buffs like that kind of work. So we will see. But that's going to hurt the playability of it sometimes, but it also expands more counterplay, and it's going to be a little bit impressive. But again, it's only to the end of the turn, so it probably really doesn't matter unless you have some sort of weird charge mechanic going or something like that. You'll just have to be a little bit more careful on how you play them and in which order. You obviously don't want to buff one of the opponent's minions and then try to attack it with one of your other minions. That would obviously not be good. So yeah, but I think overall it's not gonna give that much of a decline. I think I like that counterplay aspect. What people are complaining about the most is obviously that Dark Iron Dwarf used to give +2 permanent damage to a friendly minion, and now it's just to the end of the turn. I think for the most part you get that 2 damage right off the bat, right? You kind of get that efficiency right off the bat. You don't really have to worry about it. Usually you end up buffing a weaker unit and it goes into a bigger unit, trades up, and that's good enough. I mean, how often do you really buff a creature that is actually staying on the field for a few turns, let alone buffing a creature that stays on the field that actually helps you win the game? Most likely, if you're buffing a creature and it stays on the field, you're going to win no matter what because you have board control by a large margin. So it's going to be interesting to see if the community starts to kind of scale back from the Dark Iron Dwarf, or if we really kind of keep embracing him and keep him up there. Personally, I think I might start to shy away from him. Right now in my efficient decks, I have him making just the grade. Usually he's almost my go-to if I want to start adding legendary stuff. With this edition, I'm almost positive I'll probably start taking him out. Just because it's not as permanent, even though I do respect the fact that most of the minions I buff end up dying. Defender of Argus. Okay, so he used to be a 3-3, and now he's going down to a 2-3, but he still gives the same buffs. The last big patch they did, they nerfed the Sun Shattered Cleric from a 3-3 to a 3-2, and now they're nerfing him from a 3-3 to a 2-3. I don't know. I mean, the Defender of Argus, people obviously play him because he gives adjacent minions 1-1 and taunt. He's efficient as all get out. Does making him 2-3 any really less viable? Depends on who you talk to. I mean, honestly, there's a lot of people out there who would play him if he was a bloody 1-1. You know what I'm saying? Because giving 2 adjacent minions +1/+1 and taunt, there's a lot of value, a lot of stats there to go around. On top of his stats aren't that bad for a 4-drop anyway. I mean, they are, don't get me wrong, but 2-3 for 4 is garbage, but it's not like he's a 1-1. But again, I think some people would still play him as a 1-1. Blizzard, I believe I saw a comment somewhere saying that they're trying to take away the fact that there's so many specific minions or cards that are played in the vast majority of decks. I don't think this nerf is going to pull Defender of Argus out of those decks. I think if Blizzard wanted people to start really looking away from Defender of Argus and only really use him specifically for what he does, I think they probably need to nerf him, honestly, probably down to like 2-2 or even 1-2, honestly. I mean, yeah. It's hard not to put him in your deck just because he helps so many different ways, and it's because of that taunt, because of the 1-1. You're going to have to make him inefficient in every other aspect if you want people to stop saying, I need him in my deck. Plain and simple. Alright, 2 left. Novice Engineer. This is interesting. I don't think the Novice Engineer needed this issue. I don't think they needed this nerf anyways. She was 1-2, and now she's a 1-1. Why? I mean, now she does shit trades. I mean, at least she had a little bit of trade early before. Now she has none. Like, there's absolutely no reason now to take her, in my opinion, over Loot Hoarder. I mean, a Loot Hoarder is 2-1, so he's going to at least trade up potentially into 3 drops. Yeah, he's not trading below anything because he's only got 1 HP, but neither is Novice Engineer. You say, well, fuck, but he can be silenced, he can be this, he can be that. Yeah, okay, if they're wasting a silence in your Loot Hoarder, that's a win, guys, okay? They're wasting their silence on a 2-drop. It's a win. So, if you had Loot Hoarders and Novice Engineers, just take the Novice Engineers out. It's a 1-1. The card draw is nice. It's not the most important thing in the game. Just 1-1 for 1 is just, it's just so, statistically, it's so inefficient. I mean, sorry, the 2, it's 1-1 for 2. I mean, obviously the Blood Mage Thalanos is just 10 times better than that because it's 1-1 for 2, but you get spell damage and you get the Death Rattle. But obviously that's a legendary. But still, I mean, if you're gonna get a 2-drop, we can talk about Knife Jugglers, we can talk about Leopard Gnomes, we can talk about freaking Argent Squire is better than that. I mean, it's just the one card isn't. It just. I was reading the forums today and someone put it like this: just take it out of your deck and put whatever card else you want in there, because in reality, if you don't draw it, you'd have that better card anyway, right? You just need to make sure your mana curve's still good, and you'll be fine. It's crazy. That's unneeded nerf. I think it's just unplayable now, but we'll see again. Alright, Sylvanas Windwinner, last one. Cost up to 6 from 5. Okay. I struggle with legendaries because legendaries themselves have a lot of issues, I think. You have legendaries like Sylvanas, who is pound for pound efficiency no matter what, right? Let's just hypothetically talk about when she was a 5 for 5/5, okay? So right now, off the bat, you're statistically sound, right? You're 555. That's sound. You're not awesome, but you're not bad, right? Either. A Yeti is a 445. So it's, you know, one more mana, you're technically only getting one more attack. So it's not like super, super, super awesome stats. But the fact that you get the death rattle was just insane, right? So you're looking at basically anytime you play Sylvanas, you're almost guaranteed a 2-for-1. Sometimes you're getting even significantly more than that. Significantly. If you're going into stronger creatures, not only you get that stronger creature basically. If they don't have a board, they're gonna have to play multiple cards to get rid of Sylvanas. If they silence her, she's still gonna trade at least 1-for-1. So that's 2 a silence and a card is at least, again, 2-for-1. So she's a very efficient card. And again, the issue I have with legendaries right now is you look at a card like that, and then you look at a card like, I don't know, Elite Tauren Chieftain. Now I guess that's technically kind of more like a niche, you know, legendary or whatever, but there's a lot of those that aren't that efficient, right? You've got, I mean, the majority of the legendaries really aren't as efficient as that. They're nowhere near it, right? I mean, there are super efficient legendaries like the Black Knight. However, let's think about that for a second. The Black Knight costs 6, either 4 or 5 for 6. So statistically, not that great. Now, you're almost guaranteed a 2-for-1 again if you can kill a taunt. So in cases like against druids that have 5-10 taunts, or maybe someone who has a divine shield taunted, it's awesome. But if you just play him, or you play him and you kill like a void walker, for example, it's really not that efficient. So it's a little bit more specific, a little bit more niche. Well, Sylvanas, you can just play her and she's off. Rag is really strong too, but again, he's kind of gimmicky as well. A lot of the dragons have gimmicky things to them. But Sylvanas is just that card that's just only 5 cost, and just you play her in the middle of the game, and if they use hard removal on her, they're kind of wasting it, and there's not many legendaries that are efficient as her. Some people say that even Karn Bloodhoof isn't as efficient as her, even though you get 2-4-5s for 6, which is hard to argue, but everyone's biggest explanation is hey, if you play a 6 cost and I silence him, now he's only a 4-5, I technically win that trade. Whereas if you play a 5 cost and I silence her, she's still a 5-5. That's efficiency. And even though that's a very small difference, they have a point. It's efficiency. I mean, silencing a 6 cost that's 4-5, so he's only a 4-5, and he doesn't have that death rattle to be another 4-5. That's a pretty big deal. So now that brings me to my ultimate question: do I think this was a needed nerf? No. I don't think it was. I mean, I think she was the best legendary for everyone's deck right now because she fits right in the middle of any deck. She's going to help any deck, whether you're winning or whether you're losing, and she doesn't need any kind of synergy. Now, do I think she's extremely strong? Yes. Do I think that she's stronger than the other legendaries, and maybe they should have been buffed a little bit to reflect that? Probably. Call me crazy, though. I'm a supporter of legendaries, even though I do believe there's too many in decks. I wouldn't be opposed to saying, hey, you can only have 1 per legendary in deck, but you can only have a max of 3 legendaries or 4 legendaries or even 5. Rather than saying, you know, let's nerf all the legendaries because they're too strong. So that's something to consider. You know, I think the legendaries are legendaries. They're hard to get. They should be all efficient. They're just not all efficient, right? They just aren't. So we'll see. Maybe they'll think about that and add some sort of top deck legendary combo thing, which would be cool. Hopefully, if they did that, I'd be happy with that. But we'll see. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.
Embrace the void.
You're sure?
I have no time for games. Well played.
Let none survive.